Tonight on CFTK-TV News, a new monument in Prince Rupert has been vandalized, Ellis Ross speaks on bail reform, and a partial closure at Mesiadin Lake Campground.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. We begin tonight with our news local to the Northwest. The Terrace RCMP put out a release earlier today saying they are looking for a missing person. Amanda Dawn Wilder's last known location was at the Skeena River east of the Dudley Bridge yesterday afternoon. Wilder's description is that of a 47-year-old Caucasian woman who is listed at 5'4" and weighs 161 pounds with brown hair and blue eyes. The Terrace police are asking that if anyone sees her or has some information that could result in her discovery, to give them a call. And the city of Prince Rupert recently confirmed that a carving that was given to them only a week ago by Chetwynd at the North Central Local Government Conference has been damaged. The chainsaw carving of a wooden eagle that had been installed in the park adjacent to the local hospital has had its wing removed. The carving, which is called Survival of the Fittest, was created by Jarrett Dahl and was given to Prince Rupert as a gift by the community of Chetwynd and is meant to symbolize inter-community connection. The city is currently assessing the extent of the damage and will be working with Chetwynd and the carver to determine how and when repairs can be made. The city is also urging anyone who knows the parties involved to reach out to the city. And with the recurring trend of assault perpetrators being quickly released back into the public, we asked MP Ellis Ross what his take is on bail reform. He says he's very aware of the issue.
So we've been talking about that for the last 7 years of the BC legislature. There's no consequences for anybody committing crimes. There's no consequences for anybody carrying 2.5 grams of fentanyl or cocaine or heroin. So regular citizens, law-abiding citizens, are paying the price for this. And it's a blame game between the Victoria legislature and Ottawa. It's bail reform, basically what everybody's asking for now, to keep these dangerous offenders behind bars, put them in jail, and I agree with that fully. They shouldn't get 3, 4, 5, 10 chances. I mean, there's a number of offenders in Vancouver that have got a rap sheet, as long as my arm, but they keep getting released. In the meantime, what does the government do? They actually go after the law-abiding citizens with the idea of taking away their firearms. Law-abiding citizens. And by the way, Mike de Jong was a past Attorney General for BC, the BC government under the BC Liberals, and he offered a solution to the BC government 2 years ago in the legislature and saying there's ways around federal legislation. You can dictate what to do with these dangerous offenders, but it was ignored. So there's been plenty of opportunity, but number one, if the blame game's not going to stop between Victoria and Ottawa, then basically it's our job as the opposition in Ottawa to make sure that the government does something once and for all for bail reform, to make sure these dangerous offenders have consequences.
BC Parks has announced they've closed a small portion of sites in the campground at Mesiadin Lake Provincial Park, and that all soft-sided tent camping has been prohibited for the time being due to grizzly bear activity in the area. BC Parks says staff will be on site to monitor the situation and are actively working to deter bear activity. This video is from a caretaker at the site. Updates on the status of the campground at Mesiadin Lake Provincial Park can be found by visiting the website. If your camping plans have been affected by the partial park closure and the temporary tent prohibition, BC Parks says as a reminder that Stewart is a short drive and offers a choice of campgrounds welcoming all types of campground users. Coming up next, the contention over Bill 15. Welcome back. The controversial bill that has divided provincial officials and has even brought Premier Eby's leadership into question will soon be voted on before the break in Parliament. CTV's Rob Buffum has the details.
With 2 more days before the legislature ends for summer, the tension is escalating inside this building.
And just call the election already instead of having all these games around Bill 15 and 14.
The opposition goading the NDP government over its controversial bills aimed at fast-tracking energy and infrastructure projects.
Honourable member, in your dreams.
The bills have come under heavy scrutiny, particularly from First Nations leaders, upset they weren't consulted as required under the law.
Complete upending of the relationship between the NDP and First Nations in British Columbia.
The NDP tried a last-minute amendment to Bill 15 that would have required the government to consult with First Nations on regulations for criteria for projects to be fast-tracked under the legislation.
Concerns that our assurances and our commitment alone was not enough. We were willing to bind ourselves in statute to our commitment.
No dice, said the Greens and Conservatives, noting First Nations weren't consulted on this amendment either.
Then an amendment comes forward. They hadn't been consulted on the amendment, so 2 wrongs don't make a right.
First Nations leaders sent a letter today to Premier Eby reiterating calls to withdraw the bill. The government declined.
Grand Chief Stuart Phillip famously said that reconciliation is not for wimps, and the process towards reconciliation is not a straight line.
In the face of the backlash, the opposition parties are also calling for the bills to be put off and reworked in the fall.
Why does this Premier keep ramming this thing through? He should just, own up to it. He made a mistake and pull this bill and go back to the drawing board.
The president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs says despite his disappointment, he'd support the NDP going forward over the alternative Conservatives.
Keenly aware of who's sitting at the edge of their chairs on the opposition side.
Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
King Charles addressed Parliament from the King's throne yesterday, delivering a speech that has been referred to as comforting, which reinforced Canada's sovereignty. Here's CTV's Mike Lecouteur.
A ceremony steeped in tradition for a speech that was meant to reinforce the country's future.
I've always had the greatest admiration for Canada's unique identity, which is recognized across the world for bravery and sacrifice in defense of national values and for the diversity and kindness of Canadians.
Against the backdrop of a U.S. president who wants to take over Canada, generations of prime ministers and premiers sat shoulder to shoulder as King Charles III asserted the country's place in the world and in particular North America.
The Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun defining a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States, rooted in mutual respect and founded on common interests to deliver transformational benefits for both sovereign nations.
The 25-minute speech reiterated Prime Minister Mark Carney's promises to make life more affordable for Canadians while investing in nation-building projects and diversifying trade. But the most pointed moment came when the King put his own stamp on the message.
As the anthem reminds us, the true North is indeed strong and free.
A phrase that didn't mention Donald Trump by name, but he was clearly the intended audience.
I think it is a message, and a reminder not just to him, but to other Americans, that their best neighbor, their closest neighbor and their best friend is the same, only different.
Others were more blunt about how American lawmakers, and in particular Trump, should see and hear today's speech from the throne.
The Canadian sovereignty is not to be disrespected, that any relationship we have going forward on trade, the economy, defense, all has to be grounded in respect for the independence of Canada and our democracy.
The message was echoed by members of opposition parties. However, this speech will be the first test of Carney's government when MPs put it to a confidence vote in the House of Commons.
We did see a lot of the right slogans and political talking points, but no clear plans to get it done.
The NDP has said there are some things they could support in that throne speech, and those 7 votes would be enough for the Liberals to get it passed.
Turning to the weather, the sun rose at 5:06 a.m. this morning in the northwest and sets at 9:56 p.m. tonight. Tonight on the north coast, expect conditions to be rainy, ending near midnight, then cloudy with a 60% chance of showers. Winds from the southeast gusting to 40, except 60 over exposed coastal sections. Over the next few days on the north coast, expect a small break from the rain with just a chance of showers tomorrow, then mainly rain with some overcast breaks. Temperatures between 10 and 13 degrees, overnight lows between 7 and 9 degrees. Tonight in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect periods of rain with winds from the south at 20 kilometers an hour, gusting to 40, a low of 8 degrees. Over the next few days in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect rain to continue through to Saturday, then a mix of sun and cloud for Sunday and Monday. Temperatures rising to 22 degrees by the beginning of next week. Overnight lows between 5 and 7 degrees. Tonight in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, conditions are looking cloudy with a few showers beginning this evening, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain and a low of 8 degrees. Over the next few days in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect a few showers tomorrow and a bit of rain Friday, then a mix of sun and clouds for the weekend. Daily highs between 13 and 21 degrees, overnight lows between 5 and 7 degrees. Checking your northwest roads now. Here in Terrace, many areas of downtown will be closed over the next couple weeks. Public Works says 3 areas of Emerson Street will be closed until Friday, May 30th, and Calum Street will take a little longer. It's expected to be completed by June 13th. Public Works asks that if possible, stay clear of those areas and follow all signage and street traffic control. There will also be no parking on those streets until construction is complete. On Highway 16, there's construction work with a detour in Prince Rupert, as well as bridge maintenance and utility work. On Highway 37, watch for bridge construction as well as frost heaves. On Highway 37A, there's a section with falling rocks as well as mowing going on and maintenance. On Highway 118, there's roadside brushing as well as shoulder maintenance. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a new development in the medical world. Air travel in Canada is notoriously expensive, and one airline CEO wants to change that. Here's CTV's Tyson Fedor.
WestJet says the government subsidizes ferries, bridges, and passenger rail. It wants more Canadians to afford to fly.
So I don't want any subsidies for air tickets, but if I were to get the same amount of subsidy per passenger that Via Rail gets, I could not just fly everyone for free. I could even hand out cash as people come into the airplane.
WestJet has compared the cost of airline tickets in Canada and the U.S. Alexis von Honsbroek says in Canada, sales tax, navigation fees, airport improvement fees, and security fees amount to $133 in a round-trip ticket price. In the U.S., that price is just $49.
I have very little sympathy to an airline that is not respecting passenger rights and then trying to pretend to be speaking on behalf of passengers, trying to speak about high airfares when the problem starts at home with WestJet.
WestJet's takeover of Sunwing Airlines is almost complete. Sunwing will fly its last flight from Toronto to Cuba and back on Wednesday. The company says it's also retrofitting 43 aircraft by the end of the year, including Swoop, Sunwing, and Lynx planes it owns. It expects to introduce Boeing's new MAX 10s into its fleet sometime next year. However, they are not certified yet.
We're going to be showcased for the next month because of the G7 meetings. It means that, Calgary is going to be on the map. It's going to be really exciting for us, and hopefully that means more air traffic through the Calgary airport and for WestJet.
WestJet's owners Onyx recently sold 25% of the company to Delta Airlines and Korean Air in an aim to increase Canada's international travel network.
Out of the entire universe of parties that could have potentially bought this minority stake, having our existing partners buying it is the best possible outcome because it just gives us stability.
Tyson Fedor, CTV News, Calgary.
A new medical discovery and invention may help doctors better treat the life-threatening inflammation known as sepsis. Here's CTV's Adrian Gobriel.
A potential lifeline for the global community.
This is a first step in getting the device to the bedside.
Often referred to as blood poisoning, a 2020 report estimates that 75,000 cases of sepsis occurs in Canada, leading to roughly 18,000 deaths each year. Critical care doctor Claudia Dos Santos and a team of researchers across Canada used AI to identify 6 genes historically found in patients who've experienced septic shock. A drop of blood into this device, which was created in part by the Canadian Space Agency, can help predict a patient's likelihood of developing sepsis.
To predict with 88% certainty how a patient will deteriorate in the next 24 hours.
How vital is it to have that lead time?
Every hour of delay in medical management increases mortality by about 8%.
In January, 29-year-old Selena Klinger-Evans had a C-section at this London, Ontario hospital, welcoming the arrival of a healthy baby boy named Isaiah. But the young mother took a devastating turn.
She had her C-section on Friday, January 17th, and by early Sunday morning, the 19th, she was dead.
Klinger-Evans' cause of death, septic shock. A sudden loss her parents are still coming to terms with.
I've heard about other families suffering the same thing across Canada at all ages, and it's heart-wrenching.
Dr. Dos Santos is hopeful this discovery will be a beacon of hope for millions.
This is a first step towards relieving a lot of the suffering.
The next step is for a clinical trial tested on patients inside ERs and ICUs right here in Toronto this fall to see how the device informs the decisions of doctors moving forward.
Turning to the markets now, Canada's main stock index ticked higher and U.S. markets drifted lower today. The Canadian dollar rose slightly. The price of gold fell by $5.90. Oil rose 95 cents. Natural gas dropped 19 cents. Aluminum rose $35. In Toronto, the TSX rose 14 points. The Venture Index dropped half a point. In New York, the Dow Jones fell by almost 245 points and the Nasdaq dropped 98. Still ahead, a dynamic mother-daughter duo. A University of Calgary researcher says a possible link-up of BC and Yukon's power grids makes too much sense not to take shape eventually, even if there are major challenges to getting it built. Jason Donev says many northern communities lack the affordable and stable power supply seen in the south, and linking Yukon's isolated grid would significantly improve local quality of life. A joint statement issued by BC and Yukon last week said they had reached an MOU that would guide intergovernmental collaboration through the exploration and planning phases of linking their power grids. And of the many Hudsons Bay stores that will soon sit empty, one Vancouver Island mogul has her eyes set on a few. CTV's Anna McMillan explains.
Nanaimo-based billionaire Ruby Liu is signing an agreement that could see her take over the leases of 28 Hudsons Bay stores if it gets court approval.
She has a good track record, with malls and real estate in China and in Canada.
The Bay says 3 of the leases Liu wants are for properties in the BC malls she owns. Those malls are Mayfair in Victoria, Woodgrove in Nanaimo, and Tawasin Mills near Vancouver.
We haven't been made aware of what specific locations Ruby Liu has bought. So that's quite interesting. We know it's in Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario.
This is happening as roughly 9,200 Bay employees learn they'll be let go by June 15th.
Ms. Liu has indicated that, in the stores she's keeping, she would give preference to existing Hudsons Bay employees, existing vendors.
Liu's team declined our interview request, but a press release says she plans to launch a new modern department store.
It needs to be something unique because clearly no one wants an old school department store. We need something fresh and exciting.
I almost see it as a mall within a mall, like an experiential store that includes everything from food to entertainment to shopping.
Virgin Radio host Bailey Parker has another idea.
I think an IKEA makes perfect sense, especially in the Bay Center downtown, all 5 levels. It would be perfect for an IKEA.
We asked the Bay Center in Victoria if it's involved in the lease acquisitions and did not hear back. As the champagne is popped, there's renewed hope for at least some of the retail spaces that were at risk of sitting vacant once the Bay shuts down on Sunday. Anna McMillan, CTV News, Victoria.
We leave you tonight with a sweet story of a parent's support and how that support came back around. Here's CTV's Adam Sawatsky.
To appreciate how Charlotte Friend ended up painting unexpectedly,
I had picked up a paintbrush out of sheer boredom.
we need to go back to when she began raising her baby girl Becca optimistically.
She was awesome, and it was number 2, and I knew what I was doing, I thought.
Until Becca's struggles with walking led to her being diagnosed with a mild form of cerebral palsy, which felt devastating.
And I wasn't sure that we, as parents, would be equal to the task or what her future would look like.
But despite Becca's brain processing uniquely, despite the right side of her body moving differently, Charlotte and her husband were committed to help their daughter become the best she could be.
Thankfully, we had a really determined redhead. You don't mess with a redhead.
Charlotte encouraged Becca to face the kids who bullied her for wearing patches and braces with bravery, and attempt everything she wanted to do in and out of the classroom with determination.
You might not be able to do things quite as the other kids do, but you can find your own ways of doing things.
And Becca did, graduating from high school after starring in student plays, earning a university degree before landing a good job, and recently marrying the love of her life.
And I wasn't worried about her in life because I knew she could handle anything.
Which brings us to when Charlotte started painting during the pandemic, despite never having done anything artistic in her life before.
And eventually Rebecca said to me, "Mom, you have something." And I said, "No, I don't."
But Becca persevered on her behalf, found a venue for Charlotte to display her work, and her mom sold her first few paintings.
I think I've taught my mom to just have faith in yourself. She taught me that, and I kind of give it back to her.
And now Charlotte is a prolific painter, spending her retirement relishing being a professional artist.
But having somebody in your corner saying, "You can do this, you know you've got this," is just tremendous.
Like Charlotte was once her daughter's biggest advocate, Becca is now her mom's greatest champion.
She tells me, "Mom, I am so proud of you." And that just, it makes your heart sing.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Victoria.
That's our news for now. For more local news, visit us at cftktv.com. Thanks for watching.